All right, we've got to start tonight with a look at the threat of severe storms tomorrow morning. Scott's in the Weather Center now tracking this all for us, and it's already started.
It really has already started. Now, we're going to get to sleep peacefully tonight, knowing there's not going to be any severe weather waking us up, unless you sleep in late tomorrow morning. That could be a different story. Things over the last 30 minutes or so starting to get a bit more interesting out west. We're talking about the panhandles of Oklahoma, Texas, even extending into parts of Kansas. These are current watches just issued by the Storm Prediction Center. Pink's going to be your thunderstorm watch, tornado watch in yellow for a good chunk of the western half of Oklahoma, extending into North Texas there as well. That's the same system that's going to be tracking our direction. Now, by the time it gets here, it's going to look a little bit different. In theory, it should weaken just a bit. Still, though, enough ingredients in place to support the potential of a few severe storms. We're looking here locally at a level 2 out of 5 potential for the most part. Now, you do get into southern LaFleur, southern Scott County, and it does get upgraded to a level 3 out of 5. What are we expecting here locally? More than likely, this is going to be a damaging wind event. That's where we have the most confidence, the most ingredients going to support that. Heavy rain also possible, 1 to 2 inches, which in of itself isn't a whole lot, but you add 1 to 2 inches in a very short amount of time. Some flash flooding is going to be likely with this system. The tornado threat's not zero. It is low. There's not enough ingredients coming together to bump that any higher, but it's not zero, and that's really important. We'll have to track everything really closely. Hail, a similar story there. Timeline, it's going to look a little bit like this. 4 to 7 o'clock in the morning for East Oklahoma, 6 to 10 o'clock in the morning for a lot of West Arkansas. The further east we get into parts of Johnson, Logan, even parts of eastern Scott County, 9 to 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. Coming up here in just a few minutes, we're going to dive deep into Futurecast. We've got to take a look at the winds this system is going to bring that aren't even associated with the actual storms. And this system itself is so strong, so impressive, that believe it or not, once we go from storms tomorrow morning, high winds throughout the day, snow is going to be possible tomorrow evening on the backside of the system. Everything you need to know to get ready in just a few.
All right, Scott, thanks. Last October, the Mark Industries recycling plant caught fire in Rogers. It left a dark plume of smoke that could be seen for miles, and an injured cat that was found in a nearby neighborhood. Well, after a long road, the cat fully recovered and loving his new home. 5 News reporter Lauren Spencer introduces us to Tiffany and Smokey, who found each other in a very unlikely way.
I have a passion for it. Like, this is what I love. I love my cats. I love with the fostering and stuff. And like I said, Northwest Arkansas, there's just such a huge need for it.
Tiffany Griggs helps foster through Mew Cat Rescue. After the recycling fire in Rogers and the rescue found Smokey, she stepped in to help him recover.
Honestly, I didn't think he was going to make it whenever I picked him up. He was emaciated, he was full of fleas, like he had so much more going on than just the burns.
Over the next few months, Tiffany did everything she could to help him get better. He was battling a variety of injuries.
He would cry, he would shake his feet, and he would just shiver from being in shock. He stayed in that incubator except for the twice a day whenever we would do his feet and like put cream on him. He did eat every single day. He didn't miss a meal and stuff, and so honestly that was probably his saving grace.
Smokey makes 13 cats she now cares for at home. Most are foster fails she ended up keeping. She said she wasn't going to let that happen to Smokey.
I told myself that I was not keeping him. I had 12 cats. I don't need another cat. And he was just a foster.
Now, Smokey may have used up some of his 9 lives, but he found his forever home in a familiar place.
I was sitting on the sofa with him, and I had him he was laying like a baby, and he was looking up at me, and I took the selfie. And everybody was like, that's your cat.
She says it just made sense to keep him.
Yeah,
Smokey was the perfect fit.
He bonded to me so much that I'm like, how do I even push him out the door to a new family?
Now he's fully recovered, acting like a normal cat.
He flies and does zoomies around the house. He plays with everybody. You can't even tell that he's ever been burned. You can't tell that he's missing toes.
And thankful Tiffany saved him.
I thought, what's one more? Hi, Smokes.
Covering news where you live, Lauren Spencer, 5 News.
By the way, the city of Rogers says that fire damaged more than $94,000 worth of city fire equipment. City demanded Mark Industries pay, but the company declined, saying they were grateful for the assistance provided, but the company is not liable for alleged damages. City of Rogers says their legal team has been exploring this situation. The Waffle Hut in Rogers coming down after the building heavily damaged in last May's tornado outbreak. According to an ordinance passed last Tuesday in the city, inspectors say the building's roof, exterior, and windows could be a hazard to the community because it's not closed off to the public. Former waitress Susan Parker worked at the Waffle Hut for 12 years. She says it's the best job she ever had and shared some memories with us today.
That's 12 years of my life, you know. Family, I mean, I got more family here than I do immediate family, you know. The building won't be here, but the stories will be around for a long time of everything and how much it means to everybody. You know, that will go on forever.
City says the owners are responsible for paying for the demolition, and they're expected to do that within the next 30 days. If not, the city says the mayor has the right to begin the process. State lawmakers continue forward with plans to build that 3,000-bed prison in Franklin County, and all new tonight, we're getting a better idea of how much that prison is going to cost. Well, today, state lawmakers released their initial estimate for construction. According to Veneer Construction Management, the price tag for the new prison north of Charleston, $825 million. Representatives for Veneer say there's still key evaluations that they and the Department of Corrections have to work on in order to refine that final price tag. It includes establishing facility requirements and other environmental studies. It comes after the Joint Budget Committee last Thursday failed to get enough votes to draft an appropriation bill for the project. Representatives from the DOC were grilled on the total price tag last week.
We're going to be like Alabama, Utah. Alabama, again, is borrowing $500 million. They used a big portion of COVID money, or whatever you want to call that funny money, to get started on it. Now they can't complete it. So we need to know right now today, as soon as possible, what is the estimate? When is your completion date? This is nothing I wouldn't do in regular business.
I know 800 was kind of the figure that we think we're going to need, but until we have the design and talk about staffing patterns and really
Well, all that should have been done before we started this process.
We did reach out to Senator King after the state and Veneer released the estimate today. He says, quote, "This figure is not even close to what the total cost will be. Every taxpayer should be terrified at the sheer incompetence of how this disaster is being managed." He went on to say, "I'd rather jump out of an airplane with a parachute with a hole in it than trust a prison building company estimate." Senator Jonathan Dismang, who filed one of the appropriation bills, also the co-chair of the Joint Budget Committee, says by securing this appropriation while maintaining a proper level of oversight, we will build a safer, stronger Arkansas for generations to come. We also reached out to State Senator Gary Stubblefield and Representative John Eubanks for comment. We have not heard back from them. The governor says the state has a prison bed shortage and says the Franklin County project will help remove the burden of long-term incarceration from county governments. Meanwhile, Arkansas lawmakers set a date to end this year's legislative session. Full House and Senate both voted to extend the session until April 14th, gives lawmakers 6 more weeks to pass legislation. One of the big items on the agenda for tomorrow is the Generating Jobs Act of 2025. That bill aims to create new jobs to upgrade the state's energy infrastructure and replace aging power plants set to close. Senate scheduled to discuss that plan tomorrow. The Department of Finance and Administration rolling out a new app that will let you access your ID on your phone. Right now, they're working with the TSA to roll out this app, and because it's in the very early stages, the state says you'll still need to keep your hard copy of your license with you for the time being.
We haven't quite yet equipped all of law enforcement with the devices to be able to read that, but in the short term, you're going to have a couple of real opportunities for use cases for that app.
It could also be a few months before businesses start to accept the digital license as a valid form of ID. Federal agencies across country have been laying off employees this year as the White House downsizes the federal workforce. Maya Ellison is exploring what's happening with federal agencies here in Arkansas.
We don't have staff to support the work that we do. I'm worried both about our work, but also, potentially considerations for keeping professors, keeping faculty.
University of Minnesota plant pathology assistant professor Megan McKay sees the effects of the federal layoffs happening across the country. Her department works under the United States Department of Agriculture, one of several agencies impacted by President Trump's executive order to reduce the size of the federal government. It's a similar story 850 miles away in Hot Springs.
Park rangers do more than just greet visitors at a visitor center. They're scientists, and many people don't realize that. They're historians, they're stewards of the land.
According to CBS News, the federal government has already laid off around 1,000 National Park Service employees. Those cuts and changes are now trickling down to Spa City.
There are people who have been promoted to other national parks, and because of the hiring freeze, they've been unable to hire new people to come in and fill those positions.
The city of Hot Springs relies on park employees to tend to the national park. That includes parts of Bathhouse Row.
Well, we received notice from the Hot Springs National Park Superintendent, Laura Miller, that the Fordyce Bathhouse, which serves as a visitor center and museum for the Hot Springs National Park, will be closed on Tuesdays and Wednesdays of each week until further notice.
Hot Springs Mayor Pat McCabe says the recent changes could impact visitors, especially with spring just around the corner. While the layoffs haven't reached the national park at this time, people like Brad Burleson are making sure the government knows the importance of the men and women who work there before things get to that point.
Yesterday, we had a gathering. Once the numbers came in, it was close to 300 people that came out to show support for Hot Springs National Park.
Burleson and others marched along the street over the weekend, highlighting the importance of keeping the doors open to some of the city's biggest tourist attractions.
There are people who may be changing their plans because they're hearing about national park closures all over, and that is not good for business here in Hot Springs.
That was Maya Ellison reporting. Now, the changes to the Hot Springs Visitor Centers will go into effect tomorrow.